All right, so let's just jump right in, huh?
That sounds good.
I mean, I'm still trying to process it myself, so I'm glad we're doing this deep dive to try to figure out how exactly Arsenal did this.
Yeah.
Real Madrid completely taken apart at the Emirates Stadium 3-0.
Yep.
We've got some great insights here from Football Flicks FC Review, Match Review, and also UEFA's official website.
Yeah.
And so I think today's deep dive is really about trying to go back and look at the key moments, the turning points, the tactical decisions,
Sure.
and especially, to try to sort of figure out how this sets up for the return leg in Madrid.
Yeah, the return leg looms.
Yeah.
I mean, when you see the reigning European champions defeated in such a comprehensive way,
Right.
especially at this stage of the competition,
Yeah.
that signals something significant, right? This
Yeah.
wasn't just a fluke or a lucky bounce. Arsenal thoroughly outplayed Madrid at the Emirates.
Yeah.
So I think it's really worth digging into the details here and sort of understanding just how this happened.
Okay, so, going back to the first half, most people kind of expected Arsenal to come out with a lot of energy, playing at home.
Sure.
But what was interesting was Ancelotti's setup for Madrid, defensively, it looked quite solid at the start, didn't it?
Yeah, on the surface it did.
Yeah.
He opted to play Valverde and Alaba as fullbacks.
Right.
And the thinking, according to some of the pieces we've got here, was to kind of provide a double layer of protection.
Okay.
You utilize Valverde's athleticism to cover the flanks.
Yep.
And Alaba's presence in the air to deal with Arsenal's deliveries into the box.
Yeah.
Crosses and things like that.
Yeah.
But Football Flicks FC Review makes a good point, which is that this was a bit of a gamble.
Mm-hmm.
Because Valverde, for all of his qualities, isn't a natural defender.
Yeah.
He could be caught out of position, especially in those wide areas.
Exactly.
And so that potentially opens up space for, a clever winger.
Right.
And then, of course, Alaba was returning from injury,
Right.
A significant injury, and immediately he was faced with the informed Bukayo Saka.
Right.
It's also worth remembering that while Alaba has played left back before, his recent experience there for Real Madrid is quite limited.
Yeah, it's not his natural position.
Exactly.
So yeah, it seemed like the intention sound like let's, shore up the defense a little bit, but perhaps the execution introduced, its own kind of set of problems.
Yeah.
Particularly against Arsenal's dynamic attack.
For sure.
But even with that defensive setup in place, the first half wasn't exactly short of opportunities at both ends, was it?
Absolutely not. There were some real key moments.
Yeah, some big ones.
You think about Mbappe's one-on-one with Ramsdale.
Oh, yeah.
That was saved brilliantly by Ramsdale.
Right.
I mean, a goal there could have changed the entire complexion of the game.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, you think about Saka's corner.
Yeah.
Causing all kinds of panic in the Madrid defense, almost leading to a goal. Vinicius had that shot that curled just wide.
Yep.
Martinelli tested Courtois after a really nice bit of play from Rice.
Yeah.
It felt like Arsenal were probing,
Yeah.
finding the edges of Madrid's defensive structure.
Right.
Testing them out.
So Madrid, compact but lacking that attacking edge.
Yeah.
They had moments, like you said, but not many clear-cut chances, really, apart from that Mbappe chance.
Yeah, you're right.
What about Arsenal's attack? What stood out to you about their patterns of play?
Well, that short, quick passing in the final third,
Yeah.
that was clearly, a deliberate tactic, trying to disrupt Madrid's lines,
Yeah.
pull defenders out of position and create those openings.
Yep.
They were also very clearly looking to get the ball to Saka on the wing,
Oh, yeah.
knowing his ability to beat his man and deliver those dangerous crosses into the box.
Yeah, and we saw that a bunch.
Absolutely. And, of course, let's not forget that incredible double save from Courtois right before halftime.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
First denying Rice's header, and then the follow-up from Martinelli. I mean, if either of those had gone in,
Yeah.
it would have been a very different halftime team talk for both managers.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. So 0-0 at halftime,
Yep.
you could argue that Madrid had weathered the storm somewhat.
They had.
To an extent. But Arsenal definitely showed more attacking intent.
Right.
And then the breakthrough, the moment that seemed to change everything,
Yeah.
Declan Rice's first goal. What was so significant about that free kick?
Well, first of all, the free kick itself came from Alaba fouling Saka.
Yep.
In a really dangerous area.
Yeah.
Just outside the box.
Right.
And then, what's interesting here is Rice stepping up to take it.
Yeah.
Madrid's scouting might have focused on other Arsenal players as free kick threats, right?
Yeah.
But Rice's execution was superb.
It was brilliant.
And around the outside of the wall,
Right.
which Football Flicks FC Review suggests perhaps wasn't positioned as effectively as it could have been.
Interesting.
And, Courtois got a touch, but the power and placement from Rice were just perfect.
I mean, it just completely, seemed to change the entire energy in the stadium.
Yeah.
It felt like it deflated Real Madrid. You could see Arsenal's confidence just shoot up.
Mm-hmm.
And Madrid kind of lost their shape and composure.
Yeah, they did.
What did you see in their response, after going a goal down?
Immediately after that goal, Arsenal really pressed their advantage.
Yeah.
I think all of our sources highlighted this period of really intense pressure from Arsenal.
Yeah.
Courtois had to make several more saves.
Yeah.
We talked about that corner in the first half.
Yeah. But Bellingham and even Alaba had to make desperate clearances off the line.
Yeah.
It felt like a period where Madrid were really scrambling.
They were.
Struggling to regain any control.
Couldn't get a foothold.
And their attack just vanished, didn't it?
Pretty much.
The players who you usually expect to be so dangerous, Vinicius Rodrigo,
right,
really struggling to make any kind of impact.
Yeah, they had an off night.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I think it was a combination of factors. Arsenal's midfield was incredibly disciplined, limiting the space and the time that Madrid's creative players had on the ball.
Yeah.
And perhaps, the unconventional fullback pairing we talked about earlier
Right.
also disrupted their usual build-up play and the angles for their passes.
Yeah.
And then when they did get forward, Arsenal's defenders were so organized.
Yeah.
And, denied them any clear sights of goal.
Right. So Ancelotti tries to make some changes.
Yeah.
Brings on Lucas Vazquez for Modric around the 70th minute mark.
Yep.
And later introduced Fran Garcia and Brahim Diaz.
Mm-hmm.
But match review suggests these substitutions didn't have the desired effect.
They didn't really.
Why do you think that was?
I mean, sometimes when a team's already on the back foot,
Yeah.
they've lost their rhythm.
Right.
Changes in personnel aren't enough to really alter the fundamental flow of the game.
Yeah.
It could be that, the players who came on weren't quite able to inject the energy or,
Yeah.
the tactical analysis
Yeah.
needed at that specific moment.
Right.
And it's also possible that Arsenal just had a really firm grip on the game plan by that point.
Yeah.
And were able to neutralize, any new threats pretty quickly.
And then, incredibly, it happens again.
Oh, yeah.
Another free kick.
I know, it's unbelievable.
Even closer to the goal this time.
It was.
And once again, Declan Rice steps up.
It's incredible.
What was different about this second free kick?
I mean, this one was even more emphatic.
Yeah.
It was a powerful curling shot that went straight into the top corner.
No chance.
Courtois had absolutely no chance this time.
Yeah.
UEFA described it as a memorable goal, and you can understand why.
It was beautiful.
It's a thing of beauty. I mean, to score 2 free kicks in a Champions League quarterfinal
Yeah.
against Real Madrid is just remarkable.
Kind of real.
I mean, it must have been a huge psychological blow for Madrid.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. So that second goal felt like it was basically the final nail in the coffin, but Arsenal weren't done.
No, they weren't.
Marino adds a third. How did that goal come about?
That third goal really showcased Arsenal's confidence and their attacking fluidity.
Yeah.
They worked the ball so well down the left side, creating space, and then finding Marino on the edge of the box
Right.
with a perfectly weighted pass.
Yeah.
And his left-footed finish was so precise, tucked away neatly into the corner.
Right in the corner.
And to make matters worse for Madrid, Camavinga gets a second yellow card late in the game.
Yeah.
Meaning he'll miss the return leg.
Yeah. Huge blow for them. All right. So, final score 3-0 Arsenal.
A resounding victory.
Let's kind of take a step back now and look at some of the, broader context and statistics that our sources highlighted.
Sure.
So first of all, this win equals Arsenal's biggest ever against a Spanish side in European competition.
Yeah.
Which is really saying something considering their history.
It is. It's a real statement.
Yeah.
Matching those previous wins against Sevilla and Villarreal really shows that they have a capability against top La Liga opposition.
Right.
And as we've already discussed, Declan Rice becoming the first Arsenal player to score twice in a Champions League quarterfinal is a significant individual achievement for him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Incredible performance from him.
Yeah, it was.
Interestingly, even in defeat, some Real Madrid players reached some milestones.
Oh, yeah.
Modric made his 132nd Champions League appearance for the club.
Wow.
Which puts him, among the all-time greats for Real Madrid.
Yeah, up there with the legends.
And this was his 19th Champions League quarterfinal appearance.
Wow.
Which is the most in the modern era.
That's incredible.
And, it speaks to the experience in that squad.
It does.
Even if it didn't really show in the performance on the night.
Yeah, sometimes experience isn't enough on its own.
Right, and UEFA also pointed out that Arsenal have had a pretty good recent record against Spanish teams.
Yeah?
6 wins in their last 8 matches.
Yeah, that's a solid record.
Suggests a tactical understanding and a level of comfort, when facing La Liga styles.
Absolutely.
So I think the overall picture that emerges from, all of our sources is pretty clear. Madrid were second best in every department.
They were.
Lacked their usual creativity, looked vulnerable defensively, and ultimately were outplayed by a hungry and well-organized Arsenal side.
You summed it up perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just outplayed in every aspect of the game.
Okay, so Arsenal now takes a commanding 3-0 lead to the Bernabeu.
They do.
Which is a significant advantage.
It is a big lead.
But we all know about Real Madrid's history in this competition.
Well, we do. Their history in the Champions League is legendary.
Yeah. I mean, Football Flicks FC Review even talked about the need for a miracle or a poltergeist at the Bernabeu.
Yeah.
To describe, just an incredible history of comebacks.
Right.
Their reputation for defying expectations in the Champions League is second to none.
Yeah, they've done it time and time again, haven't they?
Yeah, but considering their performance at the Emirates, and with Camavinga suspended, the task facing Real Madrid seems incredibly difficult.
It does seem like a mountain to climb.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 goals down against this Arsenal team.
Yeah.
It's a very tall order.
And our sources mostly agree that overturning a 3-goal deficit against this Arsenal team is going to be a monumental challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think they're right. It would require
a
significant tactical rethink from Ancelotti.
Yeah.
And, a massive improvement in individual performances across the board for Madrid to even have a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, Arsenal has shown that they can nullify Real Madrid's key threats and exploit those defensive vulnerabilities.
Yeah, they've exposed them for sure. All right, so let's wrap up this deep dive. I think the key insights are pretty undeniable.
Yeah, they are.
Arsenal demonstrated a clear tactical edge.
They did.
Particularly in the second half.
Yeah, the second half was all Arsenal.
Declan Rice's brilliance from set pieces was a game changer.
Completely changed the game.
Yeah. And Real Madrid experienced a surprisingly comprehensive defeat.
They did.
On both ends of the pitch. I mean, they were poor going forward, and they were shaky at the back.
It was an uncharacteristically poor performance from them.
Yeah, they just couldn't handle Arsenal's energy and intensity.
Yeah, they were outplayed and outfought.
So to sum up, I think it's fair to say that Arsenal executed their game plan almost perfectly, and Madrid simply had no answers.
That's spot on.
But here's the thing to think about, given Real Madrid's remarkable history of Champions League comebacks at the Bernabeu,
right?
Can Arsenal withstand that pressure and hold on to this significant lead?
Yeah.
Or will the magic of the Bernabeu once again defy the odds and produce another famous Champions League night?
It's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out.
Yeah, what specific tactical adjustments might Ancelotti be considering, to try and engineer what would be an unprecedented turnaround?
It's hard to say, but he's got to come up with something.
Yeah, he does. He's got a lot of thinking to do between now and that second leg.
For sure.
It's going to be an incredible second leg.
I can't wait.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into this unbelievable match.
It was a pleasure.
We'll be back soon to break down, whatever happens next.
Absolutely looking forward to it.
And we'll be looking at it with the benefit of hindsight, which is always, helpful when analyzing these things.
Yeah, it always is.
But for now, we're left with a lot of questions, a lot of intrigue, and a lot of anticipation for what's to come.
You said it.
Thanks again for listening.